Listen. Is that perhaps the sound of the surf moving the small rocks around on Portreath Beach? You're walking along the beach with your dog, you get a stick, you throw it into the surf, the dog fetches the stick. It's a lovely day, the Cornish sun is setting softly over Gull Rock. It's not the surf on Portreath Beach. Or perhaps that's the sound of the television broadcasting after the film that you've been watching has finished. You're lying on a comfy couch, the fire is warm, you've dozed off. Oh, time to go to bed. But that's not the sound of TV static. What you're listening to is the sound of 10,000 mealworms. They're writhing and crawling across one another, and that sound is the sound of scaly skin scraping across scaly skin. Imagine putting your hands into those mealworms. Imagine them squirming between your fingers, crawling up your arm, past your elbow, up to your shoulder. Imagine them on your neck here. If you've got a beard, you can imagine them going into the hair of your beard. Imagine them on your face. What? Imagine one crawling into your mouth. Imagine feeling one burst between your teeth. If you're anything like me, you'll be feeling something right about now, and judging from your reactions, you probably are. Maybe you're feeling a little bit like you want to step back, maybe sink back into your seat a bit. Maybe you're feeling a fluttering in your stomach, maybe a chill on your skin, maybe a constriction in the throat, maybe your mouth wants to gape a little, maybe your tongue wants to protrude. If we were to look into your brain right now, we might see heightened activity in your anterior insula, your thalamus, your medial prefrontal cortex. We know what this is. This is disgust. And we are very, very good at allowing insects to produce that feeling in us. There's several reasons why we might feel disgust. Several theories have been proposed. From a Darwinian evolutionary perspective, disgust is the body's way of telling us that we're in the presence of something dangerous or something toxic, something infectious, something pestilential. Those of our ancestors who were repelled by the ideas of maggot-infested carrion or excrement or rotten flesh. Those who felt repulsed by that were less likely to fall ill, less likely to die, less likely to reproduce. And we carry the genes of that aversion in the form of our disgust. Insects, by association, seem to have been caught up in that evolutionary habit. Unfairly, in my opinion. From a psychoanalytic perspective, we might think of it slightly differently. For a psychoanalyst, maybe disgust is just the flip side of desire. A symptom of repression, perhaps, a repulsive force given power by the existence of an attractive opposite. Are we secretly attracted to insects? Is this the love that dare not speak its name? Some have suggested, the philosopher Aurel Colnay, for example, that one of the things that we find disgusting about insects is that we don't see them as individuals. They exist for us as a teeming conglomerate, as plagues and swarms that threaten to engulf us, to overwhelm us, to outbreed us. It is this quality of what Colnay refers to as their teeming sexual fecundity, excessive sexual fecundity for Colnay, that we find so threatening. Whatever the reason, insects are pretty disgusting. Really, really disgusting. But there's something funny about insects too, and if you've been reading the papers or watching television any time in the last 3 or 4 years, you'll know that insects seem to be having a bit of a time in the sun right now. You'll have seen articles pointing out how high in protein insects they are higher than traditional livestock. You perhaps have read that they contain more vitamin B12 than you'd find in fish, more iron that you'd find in spinach, also high in zinc, in calcium, in potassium, and other nutrients, low in fat, high in fiber. You might have come across those kind of ideas. You might have also read that some of the major companies in the world today, including PepsiCo and Nestle, are investing millions in the idea of insects as the future of food. And if corporations that size are investing in it, you know it's not just a passing fad. It's been estimated that the global market for edible insects will go up to over $500 million by 2023. You might even have heard that there was a report published in 2013 by the United Nations, the Food and Agriculture Association of the United Nations, indeed, not only detailing how many insects are already consumed around the world, over 2 billion people, almost a third of the world's population, already consume over 2,000 types of edible insect, but also in this report pointing out their benefits in terms of sustainability, in terms of production, in terms of energy use, in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. Insects are off the charts. They use less feed to produce more protein, make less greenhouse gas, require less energy, and less space. So we seem to be in a bit of a cleft stick here. Insects are simultaneously disgusting and brilliant. They could save the world, and they make our stomach turn over and give us chills in our skin, perhaps make us want to be sick. But we've been here before. This ugly-looking bottom feeder, as you'll know, is a lobster. And 100 years ago, 150 years ago, this was completely beyond the bounds of good taste. Anyone with any kind of gustatory experience would reject this wholesale. These were only fit for prisoners and indentured servants. Now, a Cornish lobster is about £35 a kilo and features on the menus of the best restaurants. So what should we do, those of us who are interested in advocating for greater consumption of edible insects? Should we just wait around and hope that, as with the lobster, we all just kind of get over this nausea about insects? Well, we could. But manufacturers are also doing other things. Manufacturers are also trying to find ways to introduce edible insects into the food supply using those traditional methods of rebranding and judicious use of euphemism. Let me introduce you to this fella. This is an insect called Diploceus coccus. And if you put it in the palm of your hand and smush it with your finger, it leaves a crimson smear on your skin like that. If you take that and dry it to a powder, you can use it to color all manner of things. The Aztecs used it to color yarn for fabrics. You could, alternatively, add it to a strawberry frappuccino to give it that healthy red look, as a major coffee chain did until very recently. You could also add it to yogurt or to fruit juice, relabel it as carmine, and sell it on the supermarkets. You could even give it the innocuous designation E120 and add it to the sweets that you give your children. Next time you're in the supermarket, check your labels. Okay? You're already eating a lot of insect. In fact, it's been estimated that all of us eat about 500 grams of insects. That's a bag about this big. About 500 grams of insects accidentally or intentionally every year. So we're already doing it. The future will be more of the same. Let me show you a list of ingredients. This is what a list of ingredients might look like in a supermarket before too long. As you can see, two of those ingredients are highlighted in red: Fairine and Grillon, nice innocuous sounding additives. Fairine is one of the proposed names for Tenebrio molitor, which is mealworms. Mealworms dried, ground to a powder, marketed as Fairine, added to existing foodstuffs. Grillon is the equivalent for crickets, ground crickets. So as I say, expect to see that within 5 years, except of course you don't really need to wait 5 years. These delicious looking falafel, locally produced here in Cornwall, are made with exactly those ingredients and recently won an award in the Taste of the West Awards. And the Yes, they do contain mealworms and crickets. So have you seen the new Blade Runner film? Have seen the new Blade Runner film? Okay. If you haven't seen the new Blade Runner film, there are several scenes in it which indicate that in the future, people will be eating insects. They seem to be just around the place at train stations, like your sushi is now. But we don't have to wait till 2049 for insects to become routine. We might never become accustomed to those faces and that teeming fecundity, that strange, overwhelming sexuality they have, but we'll get used to them somehow through the use of euphemism. So we are living in quite a unique moment, actually, in the history of taste, in gustatory history. Because our kids and our grandkids, by 2049, this will all be routine behavior to them. They won't have that experience that we have of seeing insects both as the future of food and as something that turns your stomach over, as simultaneously revolting and desirable. They won't have any of that. They'll look back to us and think, what was it like, Grandad? What was it like to be alive in 2017 when you had this weird ambivalence about insects? I think we should be able to tell them. I think we should be able to describe in detail what it is like to be confronted with something that's strange and alien and unpleasant and creepy and also desirable and healthy and maybe even tasty. The only way we're going to be able to tell them that story is by trying them ourselves. So I want to encourage you to embrace that paradox, that cleft stick I talked about between desire and disgust, to savor the pleasures of that disgust and to embrace this moment. Savor the moment, you might say. Thanks very much.